Hey, everybody. Welcome to Movies Worth Talking About. I am John Carlos McMaster, and I am here with
Eddie!
We are discussing the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. We've already talked about part 1. Now we're here to talk about Friday the 13th part 2, Freddy's Revenge, a.k.a. the gay one. Because, like, I hear that so much, and I usually hear it in 3 contexts. One, which is I say Friday the 13th part 2, and I hear, is that the gay one? And then the other 2 things I hear, it's true. I also hear,
Wow.
I also hear with a lot of enthusiasm, that's the gay one. And I also recurringly hear, oh, no, the gay one? Oh, I don't like that one. That's the gay one.
But when you say Friday the 13th part 2?
Did I say Friday?
You said Friday the... That's why I thought...
Now I just feel dumb. Did I say... No. I said Nightmare on Elm Street part 2, right?
At the beginning, you said Nightmare on Elm Street part 2, but in your example...
Okay. In my example...
That would have been hilarious. Friday the 13th part 2, Freddy's Revenge. That would have been great.
Oh, my God. No, but...
Yes.
Depending on whatever way you intend it to sound, I always hear the gay one.
Yeah, or the way Mark Patton used to describe the blogs that he would read when it was called The Homo Nightmare. And I was like, oh, I don't know. It's kind of affectionately in my head because I didn't read any of the posts, so I just hear it in Mark Patton's sweet little voice. It's just like The Homo Nightmare. And I'm like, and it just warms my heart's cockles, you know?
It made me really happy. This friend of mine who happens to be gay watched it for the first time recently with his boyfriend who loves horror movies and he doesn't. And the comments were all from gay dudes going, you got to watch part 2. Like, it's the gay one. You got to watch part 2.
Yay.
And I even chimed in saying, because people were talking about which sequels are good. There's a lot of love for 3. And I said, yeah, 1 and 3 for sure. But also you got to watch part 2. It's not a great sequel, but it is a great time. And I maintain that I don't think this is logically the best way to sequelize part 1. Having said that,
yeah,
I can't deny that I enjoy the shit out of this movie.
I've enjoyed the shit with you out of this movie.
We saw this together
at the Frida. Yeah,
at the Frida.
Not this last trip you took, but one. What was it, like 2 years ago?
Yeah, it was. I think it was 2019.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was hosted by Bombs Way Podcast, and they did like a live podcast after. So yeah,
right, which was fun.
To them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Frida, as far as their programming, is very queer friendly, especially in June, but also all year round. And they had for their promotional poster your shirt. Your
yeah. I think it says somewhere there the gay one
comes out.
On Nightmare on Elm Street, oh gosh!
By the way,
yes,
it's called Freddy's Revenge. Who's he getting revenge on?
His children. They're all his children.
Not Nancy and her dad. It's not.
Well, okay. Let's put it. Yes, please.
Let me just say this.
Yeah.
The fact that in Nightmare on Elm Street 1, he's coming after the children of specifically like the Thompsons and Glenn, all these parents. Nightmare on Elm Street 1 should be called Freddy's Revenge. Because it literally is.
Or even 3.
Yeah. Because it's like the last.
I mean, I love the subtitle for 3, though. I wouldn't change it. But I understand. But you know what? That's kind of a great example, I think, in a microcosmic way about kind of how I feel about this as a movie. Because, I mean, arguably, it's a sequel. It's odd. Again, like I talk about like the opening of the first one in the last pod, about watching the opening moments and kind of putting myself in the mind of somebody watching it for the first time. I love the way this opens. I love the new music. I did not write the composer down, I'm sorry. But just the clingy,
Oh yeah.
and then like the weird kind of whale sounding, like whatever wind instrument they use, you know, just to play over. I mean, it's weird. It's yeah, it's got this strange dissonant, like you don't. It's not music, but it is a score. It's unquestionably a score. And it just kind of, again, unsettling. There are actual whale sounds that are used a little later in the movie. But, and then we just get on this bus with this quote unquote, I guess, nerdy looking introvert.
The sweaty, he never dresses that way ever again. It's just in his dreams that he's this like wet nerd.
I mean, he is wet throughout the movie. His hair, his hair is never this wet. Even in the showers, his hair is not this wet. But he's just sitting there, yeah, all meek, and I think more kind of like archetypic or stereotypically, not an archetype, but a stereotypical idea of a 1980s nerd. Just kind of sitting there, hold on, whatever. I'm looking to the sky. My mouth is off to the side. And girls are giggling, making fun of him. And then Freddie is driving the bus. And then we're in the desert. And and then we find that it's all a nightmare, and the bus starts to tip, and it's lighting. And then he wakes up shrieking. As we cut to, I think it's tomatoes being sliced.
Yes.
in the kitchen. It doesn't look like the same kitchen as the first movie at 1428, but it is. And they just hear him shrieking and think like it's that damn rock and roll music or whatever. I don't even know what the line is that follows what happens to him. And he's drenched in sweat and he's heaving, and then he adjusts himself and he gets ready for school. So I mean, I'm never more optimistic about this movie than I am at the beginning. Like just at the top of it, I'm just kind of like, this is so weird, and it makes me happy. And it makes me anxious to see like where it's going to go, because again, I'm like watching it like as a newcomer, like, what would this like? I love that they find Nancy's journal,
even though,
and read all these illustrious passages I never saw a journal in the first movie, but apparently.
and also, it doesn't sound like her.
Not at all.
No.
I mean, the first passage is all about Glenn watching his sinewy muscles and everything like that, but it doesn't really sound like her. But I mean, it's a secret journal. Maybe she's just, these are her utmost desires, you know? I don't know her.
Well, I don't know what to make of it. Keep going on about the hope you have, but I need to clarify something.
Yeah.
Do you have any more to say about how hopeful you are about the beginning? No, only, you know, when you come at the entire series, when you get to 3, 4, 5, like what gets kind of established in the series, this sort of becomes anomalous. I don't know if anomaly can be turned into an adjective, like anomalous. Not as drastic as say how like Halloween 3 doesn't really fit in with Halloween 1 through, fuck, I don't even know it because too many Halloween timelines. Halloween 2. But to me, 2 just didn't fit because it doesn't play by the same rules at all. Freddy's intentions are so different than what his intentions are in 3 and 4 and 5. It is, for the longest time, I'm like, it's not canon. Like I watch, like to me, it's 1, 3, 4, 5, and to a certain degree 6. And I always thought, and then as my estimation of 2 went higher as I got older, I still think, oh my God, it may not fit in with 1 through 6, but it's such a great fucking time. It's such a, you know what, I'll call it a great movie. If it's a great time, it's a great movie. I fucking love 2 for what it is. It may not be what you need for the rest of the franchise, but I love it. But now I've almost embraced it as part of the series. I've gotten over that snobbery. I can kind of, in my head, just say, well, Freddie tried something different. It didn't work. Back to what works in 3. And also, and this is like a little thing, but in the opening montage of Freddy versus Jason, where he's kind of recalling, the power of, my power came from the children of Elm Street, and they found a way to erase me. And there's this montage and people kicking his fucking ass and all that shit. But they show like him crawling out of Jesse. They show clips from it. I'm like, you know what? If Freddy versus Jason counts it as canon, then I count it as canon. Especially just because I've grown to love it. I've really grown to love it. But I just need to clarify that maybe I mentioned how it's not the logical sequel, only compared to the rest of the series. However, when you aren't thinking about 3, 4, 5, it is the same house, and then and also this mystery of like, well, we have this Nancy. Did you hear about the girl who lived here who went crazy when her mom died?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a mystery to solve with her diary. Like, it is a part 2.
Yeah.
So I'll give it credit for that. It's not, it's just I get a much more satisfying part 3, and where that series goes, that it just sort of makes us feel,
Well, they weren't. You can tell that they weren't sure what they had and what making a sequel to a movie like A Nightmare on Elm Street would really consist of, especially people already know this, but we'll mention it, considering the fact that Robert Englund at first was not rehired to play Freddie. They hired just some guy to stand there in a mask, and he's actually in the movie. He's that Freddie who walks through the steam in the shower. He's got his arms planted like at either side of him, and he just kind of waddles toward I mean, he's literally swaying from side to side as he waddles toward Jesse through the steam, and there is nothing scary about it. And I'm like, all I can think is the body language that we mentioned that wasn't exactly Robert Englund, but it was still effective when that guy in the first movie is like running down the alley. None of that. We don't get anything. It is literally
Eddie.
Oh, Jesse.
I just have to say this. I don't think it is, but I would love it if it is. I need to, if I ever met, I forget Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah.
I think the main guy who's locked up in Weston Hills, his name is Will, and he's with his blonde friend. Yeah. They escape and they come to Springwood High, and Monica Keena is recounting this dream she had, and these kids, they were singing this song, and these little girls are singing the song, and then the blonde kid starts singing.
Oh,
but he waddles 1, 2, 3, coming for you. You know why they say that? He in that scene, and it's always amused me how stiff his torso is as he waddles. And if I swear to God, if some fucking guy on set was like, you know what, a callback to 2. If that's a callback to 2, I would love it. Like, that's my comic.
You know what? It is now. It is now.
That's our subtle callback.
Yeah, that's hilarious. And actually, I lied. I did write down the name of the composer. Christopher Young did the score for this one.
Right. I'm like, I think it's Christopher Young.
Yes. Very fond of it. Very fond. Actually, this one, I got to see, I forget what it's called. I saw it I think I saw it over 10 years ago, maybe. I saw the Bollywood version of this movie. Of Freddie, basically. But most of the franchise had already been released, and they had stolen a lot of the score from the first movie and the second movie. There's a lot of that is in that version, and it's way too long. It's incredibly boring. There's way more rape in it than there needs to be, and the Freddie character is not the one committing the rape. So that gives you a rough idea.
Interesting.
It's not a fun. You walk in thinking it's going to be a fun time. It is not a fun time. I don't remember the name of it. I didn't research it because I will never see it again, and I don't want to encourage anybody to see it.
You lost me at rape, so I shan't.
But because that's another thing I forgot. If it isn't, I can't remember if it is tomato slices first. I think the first thing that we cut away to after Jesse wakes up are actually 2 eggs over easy cooking in the pan, and immediately because I remember it now because I wrote down, is this a Rorschach test for the movie? Like, what do I see? If I see 2 circles beside each other, do I see 2 breasts or do I see 2 testes? Like what? and it'll let you know how well you'll do with the rest of the movie
I
that
think
follows.
you and I each know our answers to that. So
Right. But noticed it for the first time and felt like, oh, there we go, right off the bat. Like it's just drawing me in with this. Not even so much. I mean, yeah, there's gay stuff all over. I mean, if you play a game with yourself, a drinking game with this movie, and do a shot or take a swig every time something gay happens, or even gay adjacent, um, you're gonna have a nice buzz by the end of the movie. But
yeah, of gay interest.
But I think a lot of it is also just really weird. Yeah. And I feel like I could watch this again with you in a scenario where where we can speak freely and we don't have to worry about people shushing us or ruining the movie for other people. Because I will say, watching it on my own this last time, bit of a bummer. And I'll tell you why. Please. I mean, just in terms of, we talked about kind of like Laurie Strode versus Nancy Thompson in our first pod. This time around, and about how much of their screen time do they spend occupied, being afraid? How much of their screen time is spent, just not knowing what's happening to them and being, in the mystery of it, and how much of it is actually proactive and all that? A lot of this screen time is just denial and pain, a lot of anguish between poor Jesse and poor Lisa. They're just, I mean, both of them, like, they're both going through hell. They're both, if only, and I know that's the point, like in a larger sociological,
that is the horror of it.
Exactly. Is if somebody could just speak the unspeakable, then maybe this would all just go away. But because it is, I mean, it's a rough sit for someone who, I mean, yeah, sitting and watching it alone and having no one to kind of like do a take to or to laugh with, it was a little bit rougher for me. I do appreciate it for many other reasons, but as far as the actual ride itself, like, I would love to show this movie to someone who's never seen it before, or to watch it with a group full of friends. But as far as watching it on my own, it's not the one that like gets pulled off the shelf, or out of the case rather, the most. But I do know it as well as any of the other ones, I think. I mean, I've seen it multiple times. I feel like I know at what points I can get up and like, go refill my glass with ice or something, and I'll be back in time for this moment. But I think, I think I made my point. I don't know. Does that make sense?
I could see I mean, in a sense, the thing that I get out of it more lately is also just how much Lisa goes through in this, because in a weird way, she is kind of like almost what I want, not necessarily wanted, but she's almost like the better boyfriend than Johnny Depp was in that, we talked about how he's kind of aloof, but this one, she's not even Jesse's girlfriend, but she cares, and she's constantly trying to help, and also trying to understand and learn, and he won't let her help, and he's constantly pushing her away, and she keeps getting up and coming forward again, and she went through the ringer in like the last act of this movie. And she's not even the lead. It's more, I kind of wrote down that, like, where's my note? So this idea that like Freddie isn't invading your dreams and killing your friends, he just keeps coming to your dream, and he's asking you like, kill for me. And I'm like, that's not as scary as this, the premise of the first one. However, this idea of like you losing control of yourself and giving yourself over to something, and this is obviously where the big gay metaphor comes in. There's something deep inside of you, and allowing yourself to give yourself over to it. That can be scary. That is scary for many. And his struggle to resist it is it's all more stress and duress than it is horror, but it is a terror in that sense. But yeah, so in that weird way, I don't find the movie scary, but it is more stressful than anything.
Yeah. I mean, at times excruciating. It's like watching somebody. I mean, I'm just trying to imagine the flip side of it. If the original Nightmare on Elm Street movie had gone this way, if Nancy were just in complete denial of everything that was happening to her, and all Glenn was doing was just trying to get her to face the truth, and she just kept avoiding it, because it's the flip of that, and because traditionally, and it's been said, traditionally, Jesse's got like the role that most females are allowed to play and asked to play, not just in movies like this, but in cinema by and large. And same thing with Lisa, with Kim Myers' character, is the fighter and the driving force to the end and everything like that. And ultimately, she's the one who goes and fights the dragon and saves the princess at the end of the movie. I think what's hilarious, though, that I noticed this time, especially after seeing the first one, and you brought up emphatically, like, the parents and their ability to suppress things and deny them, and in the first movie,
dad in this one.
Well, but where they land the teens in this movie, because the answer to it all seems to be if he could just find a nice girl who could just battle his demons for him, then everything would be fine. And there was something that I noticed this time around at the end, again, because we're jumping all over the place, that I think I noticed before, but it didn't jump out at me as much. But just like, okay, first off, they're sitting on the bus. It's Carrie and Lisa and Jesse, the survivors. And Carrie leans up on the seat and just says to Lisa, "Hey, that was a great party the night before when our friends died. and a maniac, I mean, just imagine, like, okay, you're at a party and a maniac like jumps out of some flames, kills a bunch of your friends, and stands there with the flames behind him and says, 'You are all my children now,' and then just leaves."
Right. And not just stabs, like the pool boils and like you can't touch the fence.
Yeah. And then he's off. Then he's just gone. You're not like, shit, there's a killer on the loose. No, you're going to school. You're like, wow, Lisa, that was a great party. And then I think Jesse says,
being really sarcastic.
Really sarcastic. But I think then Jesse says something to the extent of like, like, how do we know he's really gone? Or I can't believe he's really gone, something like that. And what does Lisa say? She's like, "Let's not talk about it, all right?" And I'm like, oh, this is the lesson we learned? The lesson is like, you know what? We moved past it. It's in the past. It's not worth talking about. Let's just focus on pleasant things, like your heterosexuality and the fact that we survived.
You're absolutely right. Like, she is on her way to becoming a great Elm Street parent.
Yes, she is. Oh, which is a shame because she had such promise in the beginning. But she is, aside from that, which she is totally not responsible for, Kim Myers in her performance. I love watching her in this movie. She's so utterly watchable. I understand exactly. I remember seeing when Mark Patton and Kim Myers had their reunion in, I think it was in the bonus features for Never Sleep Again, when they're just holding each other and they just won't let go. And then finally they just start catching up because she just wants to know, how is he doing? And they just get engrossed in each other, just like, talking, catching up. And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I just haven't seen, where you been?" He's like, "Well, I've been in Mexico." "What are you doing in Mexico?" "Oh, I'm sorry." She just completely forgets that they're on camera and that, there's a reunion that they should be. And it's fine. I love the moment the way it is. Like, just catch up. There's such an undeniable love between the two of them. Mm-hmm. And I understand why both ways. Like, I totally get it. Everybody, and that's another thing I want to say about this movie. I feel like every actor showed up. I I am so happy, beyond happy, with all of the performances in this movie, except for the guy who, but he's kind of fun. But
I remember
but
the first time I saw this, I'm like, God, this girl looks like Meryl Streep. Do I think she's that good because she looks like Meryl Streep? No, she actually is.
She actually is that good. Yeah. But that was another thing. I was just kind of like, I think maybe that's another reason why it's hard to watch, is because they're playing these horrible situations of denial, and they're doing it so well. And whereas Nancy was kind of like the voice of reason of the first movie, and you could just kind of latch onto her and ride the movie through her perspective, even when things got rough, there was always kind of like light at the end of the tunnel. There was faith, and this movie lacks faith for me. I don't feel like Jack Shoulder is the visionary that Wes Craven remains, whatever. And I don't feel like David Chaskin wrote it as mindfully as Wes Craven did. The sociological implications and whatnot, and the psychological implications and the cultural significance and all of that. I think whatever cultural significance this movie has have kind of like fallen into place over time. I'm actually like, this puts it all into perspective. I love this documentary. I feel like this should be like required viewing for anybody who's seen Nightmare 2 or will ever see Nightmare 2. Scream Queen, Mark Patton's documentary. Yeah.
When I commented on my friend's little post, I said, you should watch Nightmare 2. Great time. I said, and you absolutely need to follow it up with Scream Queen.
Oh my God.
Like, it's a double feature. Like
it totally is. Yeah. They belong together. They should be released together. Yeah. Scream Factory, get on it. Or whoever. but so that's why, like, watching Scream Queen again, like, because I had already watched it before, but I watched it again after watching the movie this time, and it just kind of, I don't know, I could feel pockets of myself just like getting filled and getting fed, not by the movie, but by the movie's existence and by the history and by, the story that accompanies it to, almost present day. The movie in and of itself is fun at times, is confusing at times, and is it feels much more kind of like stock horror. If the whole franchise had been like Nightmare 2, and aside from, it would have been fascinating if it could have just been about gay protagonists, like the entire franchise. That would have been great. But I mean, but the horror aspect, like if it had been so unclear, like exactly what it is he's fighting against, and the symbology of the heat and the oppression, and things melting around him and him sweating the whole movie, and I'm just like, so is it hell, or is Freddie doing it, or what? I don't understand what's happening.
Honestly didn't even think. I just always thought he was like a sweaty kid, and he's just under a lot of duress.
But like, you've got.
Maybe I'm just really dumb.
But heat is like it's almost a character in this movie. Like, they're constantly complaining. Yeah, and complaining about heat in the house, like how hot it is, and like, it's like an oven in here, and then things are engulfing in flames. The toaster, it's a damn cherry bomb,
and then the things that melt in his
in his bedroom, the record that
Eddie,
melts, and everything like that. Yeah,
Freddie was burned, so fire and heat. Like, he wants him to be Freddie, therefore there's heat around. I don't know. But you were talking about a little bit about the sociology and what this movie's saying. I have a question for you.
Yeah,
a lot has been said already, including within Scream Queen, about the movie's gay tones and the metaphors, and it's not new for a lot of people as far as something inside of you wanting to get out, and also him going to there's when he goes to, was it Ron's, and he's you want to come here, you want to sleep with me, like there's a lot
with Grady,
right. But what I want to know is this, because the movie The movie isn't, it's in this weird sort of gray area where it isn't overtly a gay story.
No.
The character is not out.
Mm-hmm.
However, it is also not subtext and something that you really have to search into and kind of know, did you know the writer intended this?
No.
There's a lot of material that is not subtle.
Yeah.
So much, but we're still playing it quote unquote straight, as far as the story goes, but there's so much to chew on in there. But it doesn't ever reach the level of being on Front Street about it all.
Like gay parable.
Right. So being that it's within this middle ground of being overt but not getting to be 100%. But the themes are there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with the themes being there, I'm just curious how you feel about the ending where Lisa saves him and it's through the power of hetero love that saves the day. Can you reconcile that ending with the themes, or are they really just, well, here's how it ends and here are the themes? Like,
I couldn't for a long time until actually watching Never Sleep Again and seeing in their separate interviews Kim Myers and Mark Patton. I really loved. I considered this movie for a long time among the weakest of the franchise, which I don't think that makes it weak, but. But again, just kind of getting it filled in with like all of this information. Like, of course, I loved hearing about the movies that I love that I think are really, really strong. But I also loved hearing about the movies that don't get talked about because people don't consider them strong. So, but to get this deep into these discussions about it, I loved it for that. And the thing that, to answer your question, that I loved about Mark Patton and Kim Myers' answers is they said, like, maybe they just were good friends. Like, they could be the Will and Grace of the horror genre, and or the slasher genre, rather. And the fact that, like, I don't look at it because for me, Jesse is gay. I watch Jesse's interactions with Grady. And number one, because it's Robert Russler, and because I had a crush on him ever since Vamp, because I saw that before I saw Nightmare 2. So there's just like something like in my DNA that's just like, yes. But there's also just the way he interacts. I'm just like, yeah, that's how I would have interacted with him when I was closeted. I would have just been like, I'm going to find some excuse to like get in your room and get all over dramatic so you don't feel like dealing with me. So you just let me sleep over, but I mean, even
wear
just
him
like
down, Eddie, wear him down.
Yeah, no, but not that. But I mean, like, even just like his, I think if I had a little bit more interaction with guys with whom I was attracted, because naturally, I think this might be what most guys in my age bracket at least experienced is you see a guy you're attracted to, it's like, okay, you don't exist for me. There is a wall, because when you're in the closet, you don't want anyone to know, you're scared of it yourself, you don't know what to do with it. That's at least my experience. I won't put it on anybody else. But so just to see him kind of like at least get some interactions and some drama with him, like even in the cafeteria where Grady's just talking with his mouth full and just completely oblivious in a very kind of Johnny Depp way. It's kind of like, whoa, and it's just kind of like, shut up, Grady. Grady just like drops this train, just like, and he just leaves, and I'm just like, oh, a lover's spat. Yeah. Like, I think it's, and because of the crying that he does when Grady gets killed, I'm just kind of like, oh, you loved him. You loved him so much. You wanted so badly to be a part of his life, and now he's gone forever, and you are weeping for him. Though he's doing the same cry that Nancy did when Glenn got sucked up in that bed. That, and everything. He's like, you son of a bitch! Beautiful. But okay, so by the end of it, I think Never Sleep Again, when they told some Will and Grace and everything, I watch it now, and it even happened this last time when I watched it, even though I'm just kind of like, on one hand. On the other hand, I'm like, she really does love him though. And I think I think on one level, like, oh God, it's so weird talking about closeted shit because it's denial, and denial is all about kind of letting some information in and not letting other information in, but it still gets in. But if it gets in, then you have to just like suppress it or repress it. And so I feel like that's another thing that's hard to watch about it is, it's the same problem I had when I watched Love, Simon. It's just like watching so many people who, if you could just tell the truth and just be cool, and then we'd have a great movie, but we don't, because everybody's angry and lying, and it drives me nuts. But because it is love, I do believe that Lisa's the kind of girl who would accept Jesse no matter what. If he came out to her, I think she would be understanding. I don't think she'd even let her disappointment kind of like cloud her connection with them. He would just be her best friend, you know?
Yeah,
yeah. So that's what that is to me. It's just the two of them.
Okay. Because when you mentioned Will and Grace, I thought, well, for sure, if we're going the route that he is gay, it seems like even after she says like I love you and they save the day, it feels like down the road a conversation is going to happen.
Oh, I feel like she's already started.
Really?
Like she was angsting. I think the last moment of, okay. See, we're getting into the weeds here because there's the sexual interaction in the cabana or whatever.
Yeah.
When he's got his hands on her boobs and he's like licking down the.
But I mean, clearly she's wanting it. She's into it. So it isn't just a cute, friendly love.
And then he has to hide his ugliness, from her and excuse himself. And she's just left there going, completely sexually frustrated, but also emotionally frustrated because she just wants to know what it is. Like, are you into me? Are you not? But I think what happens after that, interestingly enough, I feel like Freddie helps her process a lot of what it is she's feeling and get it out so she can stop being weak and start fighting back more. Because you know what? I don't even want to use the word weak because I don't think she's weak before then. I just think she's kind of throwing whatever she can to fight him. There's that one part where she's holding the knife. And she just starts to stab him and it doesn't do anything. He's like, ah! And then he just grabs her. He's like, ah! And then he really hurts her by having Jesse's voice come out of the Freddie mouth, just going, I love you, Lisa. And she's like, ah! And she drops the knife and just she's fabulous, just full mental breakdown. Melodrama, like I am Susan Hayward, I am Joan Crawford. Oh God! And then she starts trying other things. Like she tries kissing him, and she tries, like telling Jesse to fight. She does, and she goes to the boiler. She does everything she can to the best of her knowledge, like anybody would.
Freddie on the mouth.
Without really knowing what she's doing. It's like, well, maybe this will work. And I love the way Kim Myers plays it too. It's just kind of like, all right, I read in fairy tales that if you kiss the beast, or show it any kind of love, like it'll turn into a prince or something, or at least it'll let you go. Like it happened in Phantom, it happened in The Frog Prince, it happened in Beauty and the Beast, whatever, this will somehow subdue him. And you know what? It does. But I don't think I think I would never argue with somebody who says like it's hetero love winning over if that's what they see, because I could see that too. But I trust that the most mindful people involved in those decisions were Kim Myers and Mark Patton. So when they say they didn't necessarily have to end up together, like in the traditional sense, they could just be good friends. I'm like, yeah.
I definitely think that's down the road, but I'm talking about like in this story, that's not down
in
the
this road. I mean, I really do believe Lisa is processing it as we follow her through the entire third act. And I think by the end, she's doing what I think a lot of people do around closeted people when but they haven't told you yet and you don't want to let them know. I had people do this to me. who knew I was gay before I came out. Then once I came out, they were just like, oh, I knew. And I was like, was I horrible to be around? Like, was I excruciating for you? They'd be like, no, I just need you to get to it in your own time. And I think that's where Lisa is at the end of the movie. She's even sitting there on the bus, ready to completely, forget everything that happened the night before at her party. But when he starts talking about Freddie, and just like, let's just not talk about it now. It's like, okay, well, we're on a bus. We're in front of people. Like, if you really want to talk about Freddie, maybe in a more private setting. I think maybe.
Well, no, it was good to hear you say that, because my only concern with if you go into this movie thinking it's the gay one,
mm-hmm.
and you don't go with it through its gray area, if you only allow yourself to say, oh, he's gay and this is the gay movie, the ending will really throw you for a loop.
Yes. It can fuck you up.
It can. To paraphrase Banky, the endings almost seems, if you're viewing it this way, the ending seems to say like that all any guy needs is some serious deep vagina-ing, and then
yeah,
you can be gay, but then the power of girls kissing you, and I'm like, okay, again, that's an interesting viewpoint. I don't necessarily like it, but
No, well, this is where
that's the problem. That's the problem that happens when you aren't telling 100% queer story.
Yeah, this is where my lack of
subverting it from a subtext, when you're in this weird, messy middle ground, and your director, your writer has big intentions. Your director has no idea.
I mean, yeah,
it's a muddled experience.
My lack of faith in Jack Shoulder as a director and having any idea what he was doing. I mean, he said in Scream Queen that he basically had a nervous breakdown that lasted all of pre-production because he had no idea how to do any of the things that they were going to do. And if you watch not just Never Sleep Again, but like the old, I think they're on the Blu-rays now, but the old special features like in the 90s that were on the DVD box set. Watching him try to talk about this movie, he was so defensive, but also so lost. I could see that he didn't know what he was doing then. He still didn't know what he had done. Nope. And they were asking him to talk about it. He was just like, I mean, look at Jason. Like if you look at Jason, those movies are about like whatever, blah, blah, blah. And he finally, he just kind of muddles through, but then finally actually makes a point that's worth making about that you already kind of said, that like people talk about like it was such a detour for the franchise, but the plain fact of the matter is there was no franchise at the time. Right. So he felt rudderless. He had absolutely no insight as to what a Nightmare on Elm Street movie was supposed to be. And he wasn't really even all that impressed by the first one. That I feel like if you're going to take on a franchise that is successful, both critically and commercially, there should be some kind of legal binding that you like something about what happened before, and that you have some insight, some understanding as to like what made it special, so maybe you can replicate that or develop it even further, because that's one thing I don't. I feel like it's a happy accident that we can talk about, again, the sociological and cultural themes as much as we can to this day, and I hope we never stop. But it's got me only hoping that there are gayer horror movies on the horizon. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, again, gayer ones that can put it on Front Street where it isn't some muddled intention.
Right.
Just,
Yeah.
I just want to, I feel like we might be doing this little segment for a majority of the movies, but like, hey, it's a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and there's some shitty parents in this one. Clu Cooliger.
Yeah.
Like here's. There's a lot of little signs before this, but to me, the one that really firmly planted the flag of like, man, do I suck, was, first of all, we know how ridiculous it is that the bird flies, the evil bird.
Yes.
The fact that you can witness that and then accuse your son of putting like a cherry bomb in the bird.
Yeah.
Wow, you're a shitty parent.
Yeah.
And also, not to mention everything else, the fact that like even the mom is expressing this concern, and he's like, again, denial. He's not in trouble. He's fine. You know, he doesn't need therapy. You know what he needs is a good kick in the butt.
Yeah.
Cool. We're in an Elm Street movie because there's a shitty parent who refuses to acknowledge things and doesn't want to help and just wants to deny.
That said, there is a moment that melts my heart with him.
Okay.
And it's when Jesse comes home in the rain, wet again, wrapped in a blanket. I think he's naked at that point. Yeah, because he just got out of the showers. And when the police bring him home, and he's just like, Jesse, I'm going to ask you a question. And I just want you to give me an honest answer. And he touches his head, and I'm just like, and strokes his hair, and I'm just like, it's your boy. You know, like, it's your little boy. You're like, you're an ass, and you know you're an ass, but this is your little boy. And he just got like brought home naked in the rain, like by the police. So what are you taking, son? You know, it's just, and then, it's so 80s, it's so after school special that it makes me, but it does move me. It does make me feel like, yeah, okay, so he's not, there are worse parents in this franchise. There are worse fathers in this franchise. But he's definitely, he barks before he ever, like intends to actually communicate. But he does actually make one attempt. And I appreciate that. So there's that. But also Hope Lang as Jesse's mother, kind of like is like a stand-in Mrs. Lance, Glenn's mom from the first movie for me, because they're both women who seem to be doing like the best job they can, just trying to keep the family together and everything like that, keep everybody in good humor, and are worried about like, their kid. But really just kind of want to get things, but don't really take any kind of initiative, like kind of get like railroaded by their husbands, which I can't blame them entirely for that, but it would be nice to watch one of these wives just smack her husband upside the head and go, "You're fucking it up."
Yeah.
You're not helping, dear. Let me talk to him. Something like that, I don't know. It'd be nice. So, I mean, I feel like there are worse parents, but I think they also both have kind of like their, at least she cares about her son. Like,
she's got,
Mom, I want to go back to bed.
She's got her head on kind of straight, even if she's not active enough. She's still got,
yeah,
the right. I'm glad you brought up the scene where he comes home.
Yeah.
With the police. First of all, I need some sort of mashup between that and Brain Candy. We're like, were the handcuffs really necessary? Well, we thought bringing him home bare-ass nude was punishment enough. Someone get on that little editing.
You just see Jesse on his porch going like, queers and queens, and one of them tried to kiss me, and I said no. Oh my God, that is so bad.
They literally bring him from like a steamy shower, and like, I said no.
Oh my God, that's so.
Oh no.
I wonder if this movie is what inspired that scene in Brain Candy.
Scott Thompson saw this one day and like, there's a skit here. There's a beat.
Oh my God, I would love it.
But that whole the setup to that is like, okay, so Jesse goes to bed. Here's the thing. Yeah. So we can talk about how like what part was a dream, what part wasn't in Elm Street 1. We didn't get into this, but there's debate about the fact that Freddie can manifest and do the tongue, like, but she's awake, so does he have powers, or is she asleep because she doesn't wake up from a dream? And there's some some little inconsistencies, well, quote unquote inconsistencies.
Sure.
I feel this way about, I think 2 gets a little more muddled.
Oh fuck yes.
Yeah. Especially because, so like Jesse gets up, it feels like a dream, he goes to his kitchen and lightning strikes outside inside and strikes the dishes, and I'm like, okay, so we're dreaming. And he like walks out of the house and he just walks up to a gay bar. I'm like, okay, we're in a dream, But then, and then the coach is at the bar, and I'm like, and he takes him to the high school gym. I'm like, this is a dream, because
Right.
one, the transition between the two cinematically feels very dreamlike, but also
Mm-hmm.
like in reality, you wouldn't find your student go, now I'm going to go take you back to the high school at 2 a.m. Fuck
Yeah.
it's even as a mean gym teacher, like this isn't um
And technically the lighting too. There's like a harsh, strange, like incandescent orange light
coming
coming
out of
from the
that gym
side
door.
of the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything I'm seeing says dream.
Yeah.
And then the cops are bringing Jesse home, and I'm like, wait, what? Because they never cut to like a shot of him waking up, or even
Yeah.
waking up at the school like he was sleepwalking.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, holy shit, was that real? Oh, did all that just fucking happen?
Mm-hmm.
All right. But then, and I think it's even ADR'd, but when they get to school and you find out the coach is dead,
Yeah.
Lisa says, like, it was like that, or later she goes, it was like a dream that Jesse had. Either she says it to him, oh, I don't care if it was a dream, whatever, but she acknowledges that Jesse had told her it was a dream. So I'm like,
Right.
oh, it was a dream. Well, if it was a dream, then how did he get home? Okay, whatever. I don't know.
I think he was sleepwalking.
Well, there seems to be a bit of, when he's in the bedroom with his little sister, that there is a
Right.
level of control that Freddie has, where it's a dream, but you're still traveling in the real world. But it's murky.
Yeah, at best.
And I think that's the murkiest it gets. Although, if people have problems with the inconsistency of the first movie of how much power does Freddie have in the real world, with like the phone call, or whether or not the ending of the movie takes place in reality or not,
Yeah.
and having powers. I mean, in this one, like, he can make a bird evil, and everyone sees it, and then it explodes. I mean, there's a lot that just seems to be, wouldn't this be fucked up? Let's make a scene, without really understanding the rules that you've maybe created.
Also, not to harp on it, but the whole party. He can make a pool boil. He can I guess manifest through Jesse, and then go to Lisa's house, throw some china off the.
Okay, let's stop for a second and get into that. Eddie, do you want to know my favorite beat in the movie? You just said it.
Yeah.
And it's a wide shot.
Yes.
And it's the fact that maybe under different direction, when you see him, he does it immediately. But the fact that he stands there for a beat,
yeah,
and then does it, just makes him look like a bitch.
I mean, yeah, it just looks rude.
And it's and again, it's not a close-up, so it feels like intimate. Like,
yeah,
it's so wide, so it just feels like bloop.
like he's like a pissy cat.
Oh, I love it.
Or something like that.
I love it.
Or a toddler throwing a tantrum. But then he can fight
and disappear.
Yeah, well, no, he can fight Lisa. He can get stabbed and it doesn't do anything. Then he can burst through a door and then disappear. Everybody's awake.
Only to
but then
reappear.
He can manifest again and bust out of like fire, and he can slash at people and actually kill them while they're awake, and then just walk away and go back to a boiler room that, and at this point, I'm like,
fire phase through a hedge.
Yeah. So it's like, now, well then, so you're no longer corporeal. I mean, so is Jesse no longer corporeal either? Because something tells me if Freddie could go through that hedge, Jesse couldn't. So that'd be funny too. Just like watching Freddie like start to walk through a hedge, and then he leads Jesse and just ow, and then Freddie's just on the other side like, oh bitch, something like that. That would have been great. But no, there's so many. I mean, then the hellhounds that guard the fucking boiler room. You mentioned the crazy bird. What else is there? God, there's
evil
so much.
Rat.
Oh yeah, the evil rat that gets eaten by the evil cat.
Yeah,
I know. And the red. Oh, and you want to talk about red and green? There's like red and green lighting like all over that place. It makes it a lot less scary. I mean, oh God, okay. I was watching that whole sequence. That's when I check out of the movie, though, is really just like, because it takes her forever to walk around that boiler room.
Yes,
it's not lit the same way it was in the first movie. It doesn't look hyper realistic and rusty and hellish. It looks like Freddy party, red and green, folks. Bring your glow sticks, dance, say bitch a lot. Beer and pizza, bitch.
Well, also the fact that she says this is the boiler room. This is where you brought the children. I'm like, no, because if the first movie is evoking that, this isn't that. I understand you got like a cool location. It's very big.
Yeah.
But like, doesn't work. Doesn't work.
And oh God, I feel like there's so many more. Okay, because I'm still not sure. Brady dies if Freddy bursts. I mean, it's an incredible effect. I still love watching it when Freddy bursts out of Jesse's chest and everything, and the eyeball and the whole as a sequence. The attempt from everybody on the creative side who was not Jack Shoulder or David Chaskin. Great theater of movie cinema. And then even the way he kind of sheds Jesse and everything like that. But I'm so unclear as to the logic, because he kills Grady in an anticlimactic kill. I mean, it's all leading up to it. It's kind of, Kevin Smith had this great analogy for moments like this. It's like getting a blowjob where it's like amazing. And then just when you're about to shoot, it's like, and you're like, ow, where's your mouth? That's where I am with Grady's kill. I'm just like, why did you take your mouth off? It was going so well. And he just kind of has like some scrapes on his
basic
chest.
Scrapes. It's not a good.
Yeah, and it falls down and then there's Jesse like screaming and crying. Mark Patton giving this incredibly visceral performance. And I'm still unclear, like, wait, so you're still across the room,
right? But
Freddy sheds you. So and Grady was totally seeing it.
Yep.
What the fuck happened?
Well,
then he's laughing in the reflection.
Yeah.
And he smashes the mirror and he's still there laughing. And I'm like, what the fuck happened? I don't understand this movie, John Carlos. I don't know. Oh God.
But it's funny and it's fun. Like, these sort of things make it a great time. Yeah, no,
it's frothy.
Yeah, there's plenty to not understand in this movie. But maybe not things I don't understand, but there are things that I can laugh at, and then there's things that just make me laugh.
Okay.
And this movie has quite a few of them.
Yeah.
I just love the idea that there's this. They go to the boiler room, the big facility, and there's that metal cabinet, and then they open the metal cabinet, and there's a single rat. But she goes, right, and then she like buries her head in him, and I'm like, it was a rat. There's just one, and it's just like me. It wasn't an evil like. It was just, but her, and then.
She was just trying to cop a feel.
Well,
she just wanted to feel his heaving chest against her cheek. I know the ways.
Sure. She's using the excuse. Okay, but still,
I'm smelling feminine. Protect me. You smell good. That's what she's doing.
But the buildup, it feels like anyway.
I know it's stupid.
The rat in the thing cracks me up. Nothing beats the meh of the plates. But I also giggle every time. I fucking love it when Freddy's at the pool party and people are trying to flee for their lives. And this one guy, they don't even feature him falling over, but you could see people trying to climb for the fence, and this guy goes, and he falls out of frame. And the next shot is of him on the ground and someone stepping on his face as like blood comes out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Just guy with a foot on his head.
Yeah. And isn't he like still alive in the next shot or something?
Oh, I don't know. I'm too busy laughing at this guy.
They paid no attention to the continuity. I think there are a number of people who die in one part of the sequence and then are still running for their lives later.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Or cowering, when he's like, we're not gonna hurt you. We're not gonna hurt you. Oh my God, he's hilarious. Even as a kid, I thought, what a wiener. It's like, dude, he's killing people. You're giving him the wrong talk to de-escalate the situation.
Right.
I don't think he's worried about you hurting him.
I know. It's but he plays it like so sincerely.
It's great. Yeah.
It's like a different scene from the wrong. Like the scripts got switched from some other scene, and
yeah, totally.
He's still acting the way that was directed.
Yeah.
I always love that first. Whenever he's playing with the boobs in the bed, and when his tongue comes out, I always just love that.
Yeah.
Like, oh God! Like there's very just classic kind of comedy. Like I need to hide my it's you see that in movies all the time. That's sort of like, oh, I transformed. Let me hide my thing. And if anything, I wish his tongue looked more phallic. Like there's like a little tip at the end, because then it'd be like a nice metaphor for like, oh, I'm gay. I like cock. Let me hide my gayness. But instead, it's just this ridiculous looking tongue.
I think it's about demonizing the gayness, and that's what he's afraid of. It still feels, he hasn't identified it yet, so it feels like a demon he has to hide. It's not attractive. It's
not a fun tongue.
Well, because also there's one thing that kind of puzzled me this time, but not really. I was just kind of like, well, this kind of works too, I guess. But like when he talks to it's when he talks to Lisa. He hasn't talked to Grady yet, but when he's talking to Lisa about like, and it made me go, I think when he comes back with the blood, he's like, and it made me go after my sister and everything, and she's just trying to put the pieces together, like, what are you talking about? What'd you do to your sister? What?
He's such a wreck in that scene.
Yeah, he is. But I just think about like, okay, so this isn't about, like, you saw your sister as like one of like Freddie's kind of like cheerleaders, doing her jump rope and everything. I don't think you know what that is yet, but we do as the audience. Mm-hmm. But also like then you're like over her with the glove, and she wakes up and you're like, go back to sleep and everything, and you're like, oh shit, what did I do? Mm-hmm. And it just makes me think about the threat, like the way you might worry about being perceived by your family if you come out. So I feel like a lot of the hiding, it's not necessarily, again, I don't think it's about being gay, period. I think it's about the fear of what that means, like, because you haven't defined it for yourself in a positive way. So it's more like this thing that you're afraid is a threat to your family and a threat to the people you love, that they're not going to see you the way you are, that they're going to think you're something else, and that it's going to hurt them. And that I'm kind of at peace with that. It's hard to watch, but if we're going with because also Robert Englund, I wanted to say, had this incredible, I don't remember which interview it was, but he's talked about this movie at length. He loves discussing this movie and discussing how mindful he was in his performance as Freddie, fully knowledgeable that he was putting a lot of the same moves on Jesse that he had on Nancy in the first movie, and even playing with it that way. But one thing that he said was in the pool of things that Freddie could mean to Jesse, it was just a supposition on his part. He says maybe Freddie's just the taunt, like the teasing, the ha ha, like the pointing and the laughing, I don't know, anything. I don't want to go create a laundry list because it's triggering, but like anything that somebody might do that's to show animosity to someone who's gay, like maybe he's that voice like in your head. And something about that made a lot of sense to me too. I was like, I like this. It's making me, everything the actors put into it really makes me like this movie so much more. If they had less capable performers in this movie, I feel like it might just, I don't know, it might just be a little less special. You know what I mean?
I'm glad you brought him up, because even though this movie is kind of one of the anomalies in the franchise, and this is the gay one. This is the one where he's like trying to possess a kid to come in the real world, like,
Yeah.
I didn't really appreciate it until recently. Robert Englund gives actually a pretty good performance in this one.
Yes.
The new makeup design is striking, but it's not entirely bad.
No.
The new lenses, but also these sort of raised cheekbones and and his eyes are sunken into the sockets more. They kind of built out the sockets. If he's more menacingly playful in the first one, and playing with his food and fucking with you and glee, there's something a little more straightforward, scary, and just sort of grotesque about this one. He does I mean, he's definitely taunting him when you see his reflection in the mirror.
Yeah.
After Grady's killed, but a lot of the movie is also just dark menace, and it really works. And also, it's a little more still. There's a lot of beats where it's just like mediums and close-ups of him.
Yeah.
And he's only kind of keeping it at like this level, and it really works. And for all that we get later in the series of like, oh, I'm yelling, bitch, and like becoming like Bugs Bunny in part 6, like the whole opposite end is he can actually do a lot of menace with like very little movement and just keeping dialogue right here and just threatening Jesse and speech and like it's really good.
And
it may
vocally,
not be everyone's favorite Freddy, but I quite like it.
Me too. Well, because also, I mean, in the makeup design, I feel like, I guess it was kind of there because you can't help it. Robert Englund's face is kind of shaped a very specific way. And so it was kind of there in the first movie, but it's really accentuated in this movie. It's just like kind of like the hooked witch nose too.
Yeah.
Which stayed in the sequels. But another thing that stayed in the sequels.
It's not drastic. There's a slightly pointy chin too.
Yeah, right. They talked about the male witch back in like the old DVD box set special features, I remember. And I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah. And it works.
But also the consistency in the voice. This is the first movie. I mean, it's only the second movie, but it's the first movie where I don't recall Freddie's voice ever sounding like anything other than what I identify as Freddie is in that low, kind of gravelly, like, we've got special work to do, and you are all my children now. There's no Tina, or
yeah,
like all that is gone. It's now, and it's that's one thing that I appreciate also, is just like the fact that like when they were smart enough to bring Robert Englund back, he took full advantage of it, and also I thought did exactly what was on the page. I know that he did say at some point like he was on set and things just felt off. It didn't quite feel like the performance was fine, but that the movie, it just wasn't taking shape. Like it just didn't have the overall vision, the overriding vision that the first movie did. So he was left to kind of his own devices a lot of the time, because I mean, I think he knew better than to ask Jack Shoulder, who is Freddie.
Right.
But moving in this direction, it's funny because it does make the first Freddie, the first movie Freddie, seem a bit more, I don't know if manic is the word, but or freewheeling, but both of them seem to apply. But I mean, yeah, that stillness is definitely his friend in this movie, that kind of looming quality, which is why if there's any time that he does move, it because there are a few moments where he does, like, I mean, there's a lot of it at the pool party, and that just shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, but I mean, the way he emerges from like Jesse's body, it's motion, it's stiff, it's confidence,
Yeah, a lot of dominance, and a lot of but playing with your food, but in a much less like kind of like kid playing with his food, and more kind of like cat playing with mouse, if that makes any sense. With your prey. And it's, I love all of their scenes together. Like really, really glad that Robert Englund got to do kind of like flex in this direction too, because especially considering where we're going to go, it just kind of lets you know that like as the franchise goes on, Robert Englund can do anything, and it'll still feel like Freddy. May not be a Freddy that you're happy about, but it'll still feel like Freddy. So I'm grateful for that too. I didn't actually have a lot of notes for this one. A lot of this
Me
is just like
neither.
off the cuff because it's a lot of it's just here.
I was just really surprised. I mean, yeah, I mean, I barely have any. I just, they're all like, we just talked about how like there's if you want to do like the drinking game of quote unquote gay things, or just like, I mean, I just remember there would be like a 1, 2, 3. You have to, if you're doing shots, you have to do 3 shots in the span of like 10 seconds.
Yes.
Well, technically you have to do 4 shots, but because he's dancing in his bedroom and he's playing with the gun on his dick, and all that. But it's when Lisa comes in and I love that she like offers to help.
Yeah.
Like,
she's so sweet.
But very, very quickly she asks about these 2 sweaters. They go in the closet, and then so she puts them in the closet right next to the game Probe. And then the very next thing you see is his door with the sign "No Chicks," and you just be like,
yeah,
okay.
One of my favorite gay things, just because it's not him, it's Grady, is I think they start on the teacher in the classroom and just slowly pull back down the center of the classroom, and you can see everybody where they're sitting. And there's just this shot over the shoulder of Grady, and he's just looking over his shoulder and just looking at Jesse. Not for any particular reason. He's just looking at him. And I'm just like, oh, so you're into this too. Or maybe you're just like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I just know I just want to know what this guy's up to, or something like that. I don't know. It's just kind of, again, my little closeted gay heart, like a little boy.
Yeah.
Like sees that. It's just kind of like, that's all I wanted was for a guy to look back, But you could take a swig then, and then take another swig because there's a giant snake. Coiling around Jesse's neck.
A trouser snake, yeah.
Oh, a trouser snake. Ooh, what's a trouser snake? Yeah.
There's a little thing I really like about that scene, because I remember the first time watching this, especially when you allow yourself to fall into tropes, even if the movie's not doing it. I remember watching that baseball game.
Yeah.
And he slides in and he pulls his pants down, and my brain just kind of went to like bully, and then the fact that it's not as simple, because you get to the next scene where they're doing the push-ups, but then he's still trying to relate to him as like a guy, and then they're in the locker room, and I'm like, oh, they have like an interesting dynamic. Like you see them kind of become friends over the course of like a very few minutes. Either that, or maybe they're already casual buddies that just sort of got in the heat of the moment. He pantsed them, whatever. But having gone past that and setting up kind of what their relationship already is, right? Getting to the point where like they're sitting down and sharing the same fucking lunch table and shit later in the day.
Yeah.
I love that when Jesse wakes up from the dream and like the teacher and the students are laughing at him for the snake, and the teacher's like putting the snake back. I love that it's not that Grady looks over and is laughing at him. It's the fact that like Jesse's like, it's not don't laugh at me. He like smiles back at him because like they're buds.
Yeah. He flips him off. He's full on like,
no, it's a smirk.
Fighting laughter. Yeah,
it's a smirk and then a flip off. That like I'm glad that you guys are here right at this spot.
Yeah,
level that you. Yeah, it's. I love that smirk on his face.
Me too. Again, the performances pull it off, because again, like if you look at it logically, it makes absolutely no sense. Like, why would you? Why would you fall asleep, wake up with a snake wrapped around you? Everybody's laughing at you, and you flip somebody off because you're flirting. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't matter, because I just love watching the interaction. Yeah, absolutely.
The only note I have left, and I don't. You might have to help me out.
Okay.
I know that something goes awry with the toaster, like it catches on fire.
Yeah,
and then it turns out it was not plugged in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't. I have it right next to the things that make me laugh. Like, that seems. Is that just one of my notes about how like stupid the dad is? Like,
probably.
I'd be a little concerned.
Yeah.
And concerned enough to write it down. Like, I mean, the bird exploded and you've done nothing. Yeah. But yeah,
and then the toaster explodes and you think there's a gas leak or something like it's got to be that damn gas. It's just like, why would there be a gas? It's like, you did this, didn't you? Why would I do this? Like, I mean,
yeah,
he's just his father is like the stand-in John Saxon. Clu Gulager is just because blindly making accusations and just kind of like, I gotta take charge. Like, that's one thing I really love, though, is that this movie doesn't, so far, neither of these movies, like, kind of praise an alpha male mentality or anything like that. Like, I think that's another thing that made me gravitate. Maybe that's why these two chapters in particular, the first one and the second one, are so apparently widely adored by gays like me, because there are other things that get valued, like actual like compassion and actual insight and patience and educating yourself on like what's happening inside your body.
It's not just kind of a cast of bimbos and archetypes getting ready to be slaughtered.
No, knowledge is your friend, and so is like any kind of like camaraderie, but it's also a threat because that's another thing I fucking love. That both of these movies do for me, at least with in the first movie I feel like it's all of Nancy's friends, but in the second movie it's certainly with Grady, is that when they die there's an actual sense of the loss. There's actual if not mourning in this movie. We don't get to see a funeral for Grady or anything like that because it's all happening like in the same night, but there's an actual, it's not even grief, it's just full on raw despair and trauma at seeing the love of your life, completely massacred in front of you, even if it is just like a few scrapes down. Like Mark Patton's not playing it like it's just a few scrapes down, a few scrapes down the chest. He's playing it like, you son of a bitch, you massacred, and everything like that. Okay, sorry. Logically, though, fuck that scene, because what does he do once the parents come and Ferris Bueller's dad starts knocking on the door to let him in and everything like that? What does he do? He just escapes like out like a window, like a little hatch.
Goes to the window and he goes to Lisa's.
Why couldn't Grady just go out that window? It's his room. Right. If he's looking for if somebody's in my room and they're trying to kill me and I can maneuver any way possible, and I'm not just going to stand there and like, try to open a door and scream for like, again, like maybe they're playing on like his boyhood still because he's a teenager, so he's kind of like out of, like his parents are still there and maybe they'll still help him and everything like that. But I would have liked to have seen Grady be a little bit more strategic than that. And
this is more of a case of slapdash writing. Like, we need him to die. He goes to the door, and then he goes at the window. We're not thinking as much as they should be,
And slapdash staging too. Like nobody read that and thought, well, we have to justify him not getting to the window somehow.
Because let's be honest, in a better film, he would have pulled a Texas Chainsaw and just fucking jumped out that window.
Right? Yeah. Or would have tried, and Freddie might have blocked it or something. Like there's
me a Tourist Trap or Texas Chainsaw when they're like, fuck this. I'll take the glass on the arms and face if that's the fucking alternative.
Yeah, right.
Jesus.
That would have been pretty cool. That would have made, and I know Robert Russler was even like a little disappointed, not a little, but kind of vocally disappointed by his kill because there just wasn't any time to do a proper prosthetic for it or anything like that.
It's a really tepid death and bad makeup job for such a major character and for in the script a major moment.
So, especially with everything.
That's it.
Yeah, with everything Mark Patton's giving us and everything, and also everything Robert Russler's giving us. He is scared out of his mind. Like he's sweating.
Oh yeah,
it's good. It's good.
Yeah. Everyone showed up to work in this.
Yeah.
The one thing that just popped in my head when we were talking earlier, the movie gave me a new. I think it's when you were talking about Freddie, kind of playing with him, cat and mouse sort of thing, like the.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me until right now, but in Freddy versus Jason, when he's with Monica Keena and he says, "I've always had a thing for the bitches that live in this house." I'm like,
oh yeah,
that means Jesse too. At least I like to think.
I never thought about that, but you're right. He's one of, because if we think about it, there aren't that many who actually live in that house in this franchise. That's, oh my God.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is.
I like that he's calling a bitch too.
You're expanding my love. That's awesome. Thank you, Giancarlo.
And he wanted to be in him, you know, and get inside him. He definitely had a thing for Jesse.
And he wants to take me again. Yeah, I love it. Just, and you want to sleep with me.
What a great time. I'm sorry that this recent rewatch just kind of expounded upon the sadness of their struggle, because I've never really thought about that. I mean, I was definitely aware, especially more of Lisa. I felt extra bad for her this time more than I ever have.
Oh God!
He leaves the pool room because honestly, there's so like that sort of heartbreak of like, it's not just because you don't know, and that's like the hardest thing.
Yeah,
you're trying to help you, and you want to help, and you want to understand this fun thing is happening that you've wanted, and then he is elusive again, and it's the ache of not being. It's not that you don't know; it's that he's not letting you know, so you're not being let in. And I don't know. There's
a great moment they capture of Kim Myers when they're in the Deadly Dinosaur driving together, and she's just looking at him, and he's just kind of ranting a little bit. And she's just like, "You had another nightmare, didn't you?" He's like, I don't ever. I'm losing my mind, and my parents think I'm crazy. You know what? I'm not sure. I don't agree with them. You know, that kind of thing. And but just her insight. I wish that more weight, not weight. I just wish more respect on the part of like David Chaskin when he was writing her could have been paid to her openness and her insightfulness and her ability to do the research and believe and do all the things you need to do to survive one of these fucking movies. Because again, like what they've spent most of their screen time doing is screaming and crying or dodging the truth. And that makes it harder. That makes it harder. Cause I like, especially if I like them, cause I really like both of them. So I want them to, to pick up and fight together. It's like, dude, she is doing all the work. Come on. All you have to do is fight, and you got someone in your corner. Nancy didn't have anyone.
Even her boyfriend, who wasn't a total shit, but he wasn't helpful either.
He wasn't entirely on board. Like if Nancy
that's why I said in the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, so I was saying in the beginning that she's like the better Depp.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but the better Glenn. Like
it's all good.
She's what Nancy needed.
Yeah. God, the two of them would have been unstoppable. That would have been awesome. They would have just like, oh my God, now I want to see that movie.
There's a good, but also on the other hand, even though she needed the support, I don't want to take away from this one person charging forward and doing it all. So I also don't, but it's okay if it's two girls. I don't know. It'd just be curious to see what would happen if she had a support network.
I think I just want like that fan fiction graphic novel, maybe.
Exactly. the animated What If special.
Yeah, something that bridges like the gap between where we find Nancy in 3 and like what happens to Lisa after 2. Like, what if they crossed paths? That would have been interesting. That'd be cool. See, now I want like a Chasing Dogma for Freddy's Revenge and Dream Warriors.
Yeah, you could just tell it and just say it was all a dream. Like, whatever, we're fine.
Oh my God, that'd be so cool. Or even something now. Like we never. No, that's one thing. We never see any of these characters who were introduced in Freddy's Revenge any other time in the rest of the franchise, which is kind of sad.
I need to go back and look at Freddy versus Jason versus Ash 2, because the premise of that is it's a bunch of characters who have survived the events of the Friday and Nightmare franchise, and they're like in this support group. And I don't remember which characters because I haven't read it in like 15 years. But I'm like, I wonder if Jesse or Lisa are in that support group.
Yeah,
because it's like It's Tommy Jarvis and a bunch of other people. And
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
One thing that popped in my head when we were talking earlier, and I want to bring this up before we go, just a little thing, but when we were talking about how like Freddie, he jumps through the glass and like phases away and then reappears. That beat reminds me of in Ghostbusters. I was going to mention this earlier when they're firing their proton guns at Gozer, and she just disappears, and like they think they've won, but then she returns as Stay Puffed. And I just think like he disappears, but then reappears with the fire and shit. I'm like, it's so Gozer. They both just evaporate.
This predates Gozer though, so
no,
or does it? Wait, it's 85.
This is 85. Goes 84.
Oh shit! Never mind.
And this just popped into my head literally like 30 seconds ago. The end of the movie. The Gozers, the gateway to Gozers thing, big explosion, and Dana and Lewis as the terror dogs. The terror dogs are burned, and they break the shell.
Oh my God, you're right.
And I'm like,
and they break Jesse.
How many of the beats do you think they saw Ghostbusters and said, "We're gonna take that, and we're gonna take that," because it's a Freddy shell with Jesse underneath? And I'm like, it was a year after.
I bet you that's why.
I bet you.
They had hellhounds. I always wondered, what the fuck are dogs with masks doing?
Hey, remember those terror dogs in Ghostbusters? Because and they have these just shit ass. They don't even. Are they supposed to be any? Like it would make more sense if they were the faces of like, of Grady and of like. It's just.
They're just like. They look like I think I said in our Happy Death Day, like they look like the Happy Death Day mask just shoved over a dog with like with like a scarf wrapped around it or something. They're just like because they move like regular dogs. They're not even. They're just standing there.
Yeah, if there was some great piece of literature that I didn't know about, we're like, oh well, no. Did you know about the two hellhounds that guard the gates of hell? Like I know about the three-headed dog, but like, because you can look into the lamb or the goat from Nightmare on Elm Street and like metaphor for lambs to the slaughter or something.
Sure, yeah, totally.
I don't
sacrificial
know about,
lamb.
Yeah, exactly. I wish there was something about the two human-faced dogs. It's from this culture's thing of hell, but no. Terror. I'm just saying there might have been some beats from Ghostbusters that were ripped off.
I never thought of it that way, but I totally agree with you. Now that you put it that way. Yeah, thank you for giving me that bit to chew on. Now I'm just going to be looking at like, well, what else is like Ghostbusters? Or any other movie. Like, what else is Jack Shoulder and David Chaskin like totally ripping off? Because it feels like although there are things they didn't like. I don't know of any other movies that put a gym teacher tied up with jump ropes in a shower and had his ass
whipped,
but literally like blood was shed on the ass cheeks as the ass was being whipped, had balls shooting in his face after he apprehended a student at the leather punk. It was in the script. It was supposed to be a quote unquote transvestite bar.
Right.
Which is why there were quote unquote questionable, and it's all problematic, but the way they put it, like quote unquote questionable looking women in the establishment. And I'm like, what does that mean? And it's just the whole thing is a mess.
and along those lines, I'd say there's only like one or two quote unquote trans type questionable, whatever the 80s misnomer is. It mostly just feels like a leather bar.
Yeah. Or, I always just thought it feels like a cast party. And maybe there's some like vagrants who just like wandered in or something, or just gonna like, oh, I hear noise. Is there a party? And you just let them stay because it's easier than asking them to leave.
By the way, of all the Bob Shea cameos, it's the best one. He is so game. I take my hat off.
He
I doffed my cap, sir, that you put
he
that
bought
on.
his own leather gear for that scene. I find that enchanting. I mean, he took his daughters with him too, but I think that was just so he wouldn't feel dirty while he was doing it. Like it was just like going to a costume shop or something when you take your daughters to the pleasure chest to buy.
Sure.
That's where they went. That's the story he told. But I also love the fact that Jesse gets a drink without showing an ID and without having any money to pay for the drink. He
It's
just
a
gets
dream.
a drink poured for him.
Well, I think it's a dream, you know.
It might, yeah, maybe.
He also did the thing that happens in movies that I hate, but it's a movie. It's not his fault, but it happens in every movie. He said, I'll have a beer. And
yes.
Because at no point in our lives, I'm sure you haven't, I have never gone into a bar and said, I'll have a beer. But it's one of the rules of movies.
Yeah.
You can't say, I'll have a Coors or I'll have a, you know.
No.
You have to say, I'll have a beer. 2 beers, please. Like, oh, okay. Here are 2 beers. If I was a bartender and somebody said 2 beers, I would get the most expensive beers and put them down. Like,
that's what, I think there are too many bartenders who want to keep their jobs who don't do that. But I think I feel like I must have seen somebody at some point order something just vague and watch an exasperated bartender go just like slap a wine list down or, you know, whatever, or just say like, what do you want? Here, look at these pumps, just point at one. I'll give you whichever one you want, but you got to tell me which one you want. Something like that. And it's like, oh dear God. But yeah, I'll have a beer. It's like going into a diner and going, I'll have a meal, please.
Exactly.
Might I have a plate? Might I have a plate of something? A plate of something. Yeah, a businesswoman special.
You know, some places they have like a special for business.
We don't have anything like that.
I'm glad and that movie has a whole elongated dream sequence too, you know. So
yes, it does.
It's on point to go in this deviation.
Romy and Michelle's high school reunion is the sole sequel to Freddy's Revenge.
Yeah.
if you think about it, don't think too hard.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. I think we've deviated enough that we should just wrap
I think
up.
so.
Yeah. So yay. We'll be back for part 3. We're gonna do all of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining me.
Me?
Eddie.
Oh, stop. Thank you.
And thank you all for tuning in, those of you who tuned in. We'll be back, and you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Movies Worth Talking About.